Hi, peoples. Hi, people. Hi, people. I'm going to upload a picture of one of the checklists. So if this was real life, you would be coming in and I'd be like, hi, welcome here. Thanks. Just find a place you could sit down. Here we've got M&Ms in every bag and every flavor I could find in rainbow order. And then we've got a candle. And then I've got these little friends here that are representing your child who is age eligible for kindergarten. But I'm going to first upload a picture of a one of the checklists that I would normally hand out. So these are the checklists that if you were to come in, I would hand you this piece of paper and I'd be like, hi, welcome. Here, you can look over this and then decide what you want to do. If you want to look at this, if you just want to take a breather, if you want to rest. This is really different. Life right now is really different about all these things. Okay, so I think that hi, friend. I think that if we were, you should be able to toggle around on this page to be able to find this document I'm talking about. It's a basic checklist of some questions for families, caregivers, and teachers to ponder if they're considering kindergarten, and especially if they're not sure. So I understand the experience of being really confident that about your kiddo going to kindergarten, and I understand the experience of not. So we're here for both of those. One thing I didn't take into account is that the sun is setting behind me. So I'm hoping that the light in my room is enough to let me be seen. The other thing that's happening today, and it's happened all day, is that when I go to make this image not backwards, it turns green. At least it did before. So now I'm going to try it again, just in case it's better. Like green. So let's see. And yeah, see? Is it green? It's green for me. I can look on my own computer. I'll tell you if it's green or not. Maybe it's not. But it feels really green. It looks completely green to me. So I think I'm going to not bother keeping it that way. And I'm just going to go through some things. So in about 30 seconds, I'll start talking. In the meantime, if there are things that you wish that I would talk about and have, okay, very green, great. Then I went back. So that's weird. I don't understand that unless it's supposed to be a funny thing, like may the 4th be with you, look like Yoda, which is annoying to me right now, I'll say, since we're grown-ups here. I posted the dry erase board picture of the things I'm planning to talk about. And I posted the picture of the checklist of items that I often encourage families to look at as they're considering their child going to kindergarten. So those things are both on the website, which I can even see myself here. So that's kind of fun. So I feel like I'm double with you now because I'm looking at it on my computer and I'm talking to you here. So feel free to look at those because in 10 seconds I'll just start working through those. And I'm sorry things will be backwards for you, but that to me feels better than everything being green. If you were in the preschool building with me, it would be so beautifully quiet. It would be as quiet as we were making it. And I'm very aware that it is likely that your home has not been like that for you for a while. And so that's part of my thinking of you these days. So I will begin through. I'm able to see comments when they're made, so hopefully I'll be able to respond to them. I think there is a lagging with Facebook Live, as I understand it. But feel free to message there. If there's something I don't talk about here, I'm happy to answer you privately. Or if you don't want to talk about it openly like this and you do want me to know, you can send me a message otherwise too. So the first thing that I would like to make sure that I say is that these little people dolls here are the preschoolers from New Creation Preschool this school year who are age eligible for kindergarten. And there are several of those who aren't going to kindergarten in this coming school year. There are several who aren't sure yet. And part of why I like to include everybody is because it's still a rite of passage to arrive at the age where theoretically this child could go is something that's worth acknowledging. And it's also worth practicing, not assuming someone will go to kindergarten just because they're 5. So that's one thing we talk about here. And also recognizing that a great majority of kids are ready to go to kindergarten. And to say that children should be allowed to go to kindergarten regardless of their readiness. So this is where I get a little bit on my soapbox and where in real life I sometimes start swearing, which I'm not going to do tonight because I have a great passion about children being seen and appreciated for who they are and having their needs met by systems. So that's some of my energy. So the kids back here, I am so grateful to know that some of these little friends will be back in the building with me the next time we go back in the building. And I'm really grateful for that and excited. And some of these friends I know will be going to kindergarten and I will miss them terribly. And I'm so glad they get to go to kindergarten. So it's all of those feelings and it's everything at once. So I'm going to go through this list of things that I know is backwards for you. And just talk about a few things that I would advise for you and questions that I've had raised to me as you either ponder your child going to kindergarten or you are sure they're going. Either way, this works for you. So the things in red, which I think of being kind of those basic self-help groundedness skills, things, self-sufficiency and bathroom needs are kind of the big things that people think about and wonder about. And here would be my request to you. Kindergarten teachers are outnumbered and have a huge job in terms of managing a classroom of a lot of little bodies, and they're often doing it on their own. So quite frankly, whatever you can do to have your child be ready to be self-sufficient with their clothing, backpack, those supplies, will not only be helpful for the teacher, but it will fill your child with a sense of, I got this. So when the classroom feels chaotic, because it likely will be, because classrooms are with young children, especially if they're fun ones, your child doesn't have to worry or wonder about when they will get help because they will not need it. So with certain things. So if they can have a coat that has, for instance, Velcro on it. So maybe it has a zipper and maybe it has buttons, but it also has Velcro. What they can do is just know, because maybe the teacher will say, you've got to have your coat zipped up, get your coat closed before we go outside. Well, if there's Velcro, if they can't do the zipper, if they can't get those buttons done, they've got Velcro, they can just close it with the Velcro. That's a tip. Same with shoes. They've got to be able to get their shoes on and off by themselves, especially if they go to a school where they do some shoe changing into chore boots or something. If they can have shoes that they're able to manage on their own, that is so helpful. Especially if they can be the gym shoes or PE shoes. My understanding is it's really helpful if families participate in that request for their kiddos. So clothing, same with things like their pants, overalls, and fancy little, I almost said costumes, but costumes or outfits. If they can have those things that they can do on their own. So a snap and a button can also be difficult for some kids, even when they get to be 5 and 6 years old, and older than that even. So if you can dress them in clothes, at least for a while, that they can 100% manage on their own, they got this, they can do this, that is a beautifully helpful thing. Same with layers. So the classroom may have certain plans or ideas about when you can take off your when you can take off your jackets and things like that. But if they can at least have that option to be able to, if they're too hot, they can take off their sweater, have a short sleeve shirt underneath. Just whatever you can think of that might allow them to be able to manage themselves and fill them with that sense of confidence. That's the first thing. Oh, see, now I'm going to make an erase. Oh, same with personal belongings. Please, when they get to, if they are heading to kindergarten, a big backpack, like a standard size, is really helpful. And for it to be labeled with their name on the outside or with some identifying item hanging from it will help your teacher, your child's teacher. It'll also help your child be able to recognize, oh yeah, that is mine. Because there are some, I'll tell you, one class at preschool, we had, what was it, 3 or 4 of the exact same Paw Patrol backpacks. That got kind of wild. We had some mix-ups with that. Teachers did. So whatever you can do to help with that. The other thing I have written in red has to do with bathroom needs. Everybody comes into this world with their own body that develops and grows in its own way. And so you recognizing in your child what their bathroom patterns are will be helpful. The one thing I think is pretty safe to say, and I may be wrong and happy to be wrong about this, my understanding is that a kindergarten teacher in a regular ed classroom will not be participating in wiping. So if your child has pooped, that they won't be participating in wiping them. So what I encourage you to practice with your child is learning that self-sufficiency, which means grown-ups that there are going to probably be some poopy underwear, which when that is too much for you, that's going to just be your work to do, right? To like figure out how you're going to deal with this so that they can practice that. One bit of advice I give is that for kids who've had accidents like that or are not confident about wiping or feel that stress, if you can just reassure them, you know what, just get through your day, get home, and we'll help clean you up when you get home. This is, these feel like really tender things to imagine, like we're sending our kids out to a world where they're on their own, and they aren't on their own in terms of their teachers love them and will love them and will take care of them. And this is a time to practice that self-sufficiency and self-reliance and these school skills because it fills them with that sense of confidence too. So yeah. If we were in real life, I'd say so. Anything more on that? Someone might say something or you'd laugh and tell me a story about it. So I miss you all a lot right now. I'm going to move on to what I consider the orange things, that part of us that is like this energy center, impulsivity, creativity. In young children, it can show up as behavior problems often is how they're referred to. A common question these days is what to do and about how to make the decision for kindergarten based on these things, and also how do I communicate with my child's kindergarten teacher when you know that your child is prone to things like outbursts, hitting, biting, defiance, impulsivity, especially when it has to do with responding to an authority figure. It has to do with responding to a classmate. So first of all, to say that a lot of that is typical for this age group. Those are typical things for them, ways for them to express themselves. And at the same time, when they get to be 5 and 6 years old, a lot of that impulsivity can start to mellow out typically and can start to be something they can kind of cap and keep in, which means after school you may have a whole insert bad word show in the car, because they've held it together all day. So that's another way to prepare yourselves and get bolstered up during the days when you're not with them. One thing that I do for you families where I've had your kiddos is that I send on with them things that I've done in the classroom for them to be successful in our classroom, meaning that they've had a sense of, I belong here, I know how to get my needs met, I know what to do when I'm in distress. That's included in our exit report. And if that's something that your child's teacher, if you're not from this preschool, is able to offer, I think that's a really beautiful way to begin that link. And I also think you as parents can begin that conversation. If you notice those things in your child, to be able to communicate that with your teachers ahead of time, what's worked and what's not worked. That's a tough one. It's a tough one. And schools are highly equipped to deal with children with behavior needs that go beyond the typical classroom setting. I've got a dear friend who works with these kiddos all the time. There are people there who know what to do and know how to do it. And I really believe that it's not as simple as a child just getting in trouble. It's more figuring out what's happening and why is it happening and what can we do about this. I really like to have a lot of confidence in that. So there's that. Similarly, one question is, how long does my child, so for families who are trying to decide, or families who are nervous about their child showing up in the kindergarten classroom, how long do they need to be able to sit still? On the checklist, I think it suggests 15 minutes. I have a kindergarten teacher I talked to. She did not give me a time specific thing. If your child was with me, if I have concern about them being able to sit still or be with us for structured time, I will sure pass on those modifications, suggestions, things we've done or things I can imagine they may need, whether it's some kind of hands-on fidget thing, whether it's an alternate seating. So there's a lot of ways that they can do that. And at the same time, if you're looking at your preschooler now and thinking they just don't ever sit still, they don't care about things like circle time activities, they don't care if you go to church, they don't care about Sunday school, they don't care about children's time, they're not engaged in story time at the library, they just seem off in their own world, and it's really hard to get them engaged, that would be a thing for you to process more, and I'm happy to help process that more with you. To understand if this is where they're at socially, emotionally, is this developmental? Something that they just haven't grown out of yet? Is this some difference in the way they're processing the world around them? And it often just takes living through it to figure it out. But sometimes there can be indicators that this is more than just a natural development, and this is a little bit, there might be some more of a difference in how they're processing the world and things that can happen to help them in that, so that they feel successful. That's the whole goal of this, so that they can show up in kindergarten and feel like, yeah, I got this. I know how to participate here. I know how to belong. All right. I'm going to now just see if there are any input questions or comments that I would like to, that would be relevant to me. Oh, what's a lofty, oh yeah, lofty goal. I hear you. I know who's talking to me there. So when we move away from the yellow, which is, so if you all are familiar with the word chakra, that's kind of how I've organized these things. So we're moving away from that, our power center and the way that we show up in the world, and we're moving into the green heart area. And this is where I get extremely protective and passionate when I think of their little hearts, and I think of the hearts of all the children that they will be with, and the hearts of the adults who will be working with them. So one question was a concern for a couple of families who haven't yet decided if their child will be old enough for kindergarten, if going would be beneficial to them, because of their extreme attachment to items, to their lovies or to their things. Knowing that in the kindergarten classroom, it may be most typical for children to leave those things at home or leave them in their backpacks. And there's a wonderful children's book called Owen by Kevin. And I say wonderful, and I'm scratching my forehead out of a little discomfort because there are words I change in that. So it's wonderful. I like it for the way that I do it, and I don't know if I brought it home. So sometime I'll read my slightly altered version, because there are just some ways that I would rather process it and explain things to kids. But so when children are so attached to these things, again, I think it comes down to the question of, is it a pattern of their life? Is it a habit of their life? One that they're ready to make some changes with? Or is it something that they are not able to function without that? And that can be true of younger, socially, emotionally younger children. Not a problem, just where they're at. So in all of these things, at the bottom of that checklist, there's a little blurb that says, if you answer yes to these things, then it is likely that your child would find kindergarten to be manageable and hopefully fun. If your child will be younger than 5.5 years on the first day of kindergarten, and or if you answer no to any of these, please consider visiting with others. That's just to say, because my guess is then you're like, yeah, I don't know how they're going to do with that. The rigor of kindergarten. And this would be an area of where I would say, yeah, let's talk more about that and figure that out. Are they somebody who enjoys packing up their stuff and playing on their own, and find it frustrating, extremely annoying, extremely difficult to be told to leave those things at home. That's something for you to think about. Connected with that, what you might be seeing in your child overall is an internal anxiety, and that can just be part of who they are, who we are. It's who I was as a child, big time. And so there is a fantastic list of modifications that can be made for children heading into a classroom setting to help them with their anxiety. I got my hands on it. It's from a second grade teacher somewhere. I can't remember where off the top of my head. To me, it's a wonderful list. I know I've shared it with many of you, and things that teachers already do. And it might be helpful for you to be able to read those things and have some confidence and some sense of what you're even asking for. It's also a document that you can use with your child to say, well, what would be helpful for you? So it happens at preschool all the time. They don't want to come for whatever reason. And so if we can figure out, ask the hard, what can often be hard for us to say, what are you afraid of? Is there something you can think of? Is there someone you don't like? And instead of brushing it off and saying, oh, no, that teacher is nice, find out why. And it doesn't mean that that teacher is doing anything wrong. I've had kids who do not like me at all, who don't want me to look at them or talk to them. It's not happened often. And I've learned to not take it personally and learn to just understand that for whatever reason, this is happening for this child. And so I had a plan with one friend for the first 6 months that I would not look at them. So they came in the room and I would do this, and I would talk to them and acknowledge they were there. And it was an agreement that I would not make eye contact. So there are ways to help meet your children's needs. And when anxiety and that underlying anxiety is something that you see showing up in your child's life, that is something that can be cared for. I really believe that. There is an item on this checklist that I have referred to a few times, about halfway down, that says, does your pre-K child feel good about oneself and others? And I have been tempted to remove that question because it feels like judgment and vague. And I've left it in because I think what it speaks to is something that's valuable. If you hear your child often tearing themselves down, calling themselves things, I'm going to say some hard words right now, dumb, stupid, I can't get anything right, I'll never know how to do it, I give up. Those are things that are common for children as they move out in child development. That first plateau is often seen about the age of 3. The next one is not until the age of 7. But when they move between that 4 to 5-year-old, it's often a parallel to the teenage years, where they get defiant and they get sassy and they backtalk and they're very, very self-consumed and self-centered, and that's what they're supposed to do. And it can get exhausting, I know. And with that, though, as they lose that egocentrism, they lose that sense of being the only thing that matters in the world, they start to get afraid and realize, oh, so they naturally get that sense of, I'm not the most important only thing in the world. So then those fears can creep in too, and that sense of not measuring up. So when you hear that from your child, reassuring them is helpful and important, but can also be an indicator of something to let your kindergarten teacher know of, or can be an indicator of them still being lower down in that social emotional development, where they're still really not quite there yet to see themselves as a competent, capable part as an individual in the world. They're much more comfortable being under the wing of somebody. What? You were asking for M&Ms? Okay, well, they're here. Do you want them? Okay. That was for real. So this is like real life. When I come home from these meetings and I bring home the extra M&Ms that I always buy families, I always share with the family. Well, I just had one of my kids come by and ask for the M&Ms, or if there would be any. Yes, there will be, because I've actually not even eaten any. Telling you, this time is wild. All right, we are really cruising through, and I'm committed always to keeping these meetings short. And we're over halfway through the stuff I wanted to process with you. So we're moving out of their sweet little heart center into how they show up in the world, how they communicate, and what they will. And the main questions here are academically. What do they need to know? Do they need to know how to write their name? That's kind of the common thing. And I would, okay, so my answer is twofold. Nobody needs, okay, so this might be where I get some pushback. But the way I understand how school works in our society is they can show up as they show up and be welcomed in as a student, as a kindergartner. So they don't need to know anything. Having said that, it would be really helpful for everybody if they knew how to write their name. And how they write their name may look different. I've told this story before, and now he's old enough, I have his permission to tell it, to keep telling it, that when my son was at kindergarten roundup back, he's 18 now. I was teaching preschool then. I was his preschool teacher and director too. So we go in feeling like, okay, he's really nervous about this, but we're there, whatever. And the grown-up was really friendly and said, okay, honey, would you write your name on this name tag? And he takes the marker and he does scribble. And I stood there like, I felt waves of shame and embarrassment and fear, because I thought you knew how to write your name and what's happening. And and I'll tell you, he can write completely by now. He can write his name completely, and he made it through, and he's doing fine. It reminds me of both things. So that, yes, your child can show up as they show up. And especially if there's somebody who gets cold feet or gets deer in the headlights when they're asked to perform, that's very common. They might not show up in the same way they would otherwise. Having your child write their name and recognize their name is extremely helpful. And if that's difficult for them, let's figure out why. So what's happening? Is it a muscle thing? Is it a body thing? Is it a processing thing? Is it a behavioral thing? They've got it. They put the brakes on because they can't do it right in their mind. But how they write their name is how they write their name. And then also, what do they need to know in addition to that? This big question of what do they need to know? Our school district has a wonderful flock of kindergarten teachers who I think will communicate with you the things that would be helpful for their classroom. So there are statewide district-wide skills and concepts, and then there are also the ways that different teachers teach and things that they know would be helpful for them. I do have a top 7 that I got from one of my kindergarten teacher friends. Is it 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Top 7 things. When I say, what would you like for these kiddos to come in knowing? So here they are. To write his or her name. Some recognition of letters and sounds. Better yet, the difference between a letter and a number. That's brilliant. So we talk about that at preschool, but I don't know that I've talked about it that clearly. Like, is this a number or is this a letter? So do that. Start doing that, everybody. Know their shapes and colors. At our preschool, we also work on writing those color words and recognizing those color words. Holding a pencil and writing. This is where we talk about the kindergarten way. And I know I've done this with Circle Time Online. Ideally, for them to be able to work on that tripod, 3-finger writing grip would be fantastic. Because when they start doing all that wild stuff like this, they may be redirected in the kindergarten setting as teachers and people are working with them on that formation. So that'd be a great thing to work on already at home. When you see them holding it a different way, reminding them of the kindergarten way. So they have their way, and there is a kindergarten way. They can show up in kindergarten holding it how they do, and they will likely be encouraged to try it this way. So that would be a great thing for you to be doing at home. And if we get to have summer preschool together, kind of doubt it, I'll do that too. Can cut with scissors. Same thing as we've talked about. I don't know if I have any little scissors here. Where your thumb is the driver is the language I use. So there can be some wild scissor holding formation. I don't have any scissors, but you can imagine that, or have seen it, how they can have their hands every which way and be able to cut. And that's great. Again, encouraging them to be able to get that thumb on top and holding their paper and get their elbow down even to be able to cut and start practicing cutting on lines is something that we do a lot of. It's a great skill, great challenge for a lot of kiddos. And now we've got a couple of pretty basic things. Listen and follow directions, and respectful social skills. That is my passion. That is probably the biggest work that I feel like I do at preschool, is that the expectation that if a teacher asks you to do something, you respond. Ideally, you just do it. You do it. And if you don't want to, you tell us about it, you talk about it, you process it. But that in general, the teachers are in charge. And so if we've said it's time for circle time, then it's time for circle time. That kind of is the mentality and the attitude with our older kiddos. And so if you've been at New Creation Preschool, I really have a lot of confidence in these kiddos when they get into the classroom setting. And I've heard feedback from kindergarten teachers that they see that these kiddos, they know how to do this. Social skills that are developmentally appropriate, that's a huge thing we work on. That self-advocacy, speaking up for yourself, trying new things. If you've told someone to stop, if someone's talk, you don't like it, and you say, stop, and they don't stop, and you keep saying, stop, and they don't stop. First of all, they were supposed to stop by New Creation Plan the first time. They didn't. So this person, move on to something new for your sake and to get your need met. If you can't get away from the person that you're telling to stop, you're allowed to yell for help. You're allowed to move your body to get yourself safe. Those are things that when they get into that kindergarten setting, I think that they are able to interact with peers in a way that is helpful for the whole classroom and hopefully will help nurture some of their experiences with peers there. Okay, I've got a question, and I'm so glad. So writing the name in all caps, so all capital. There's a handwriting curriculum out there called Handwriting Without Tears. And I know it has been used by some schools in our district, and that intentionally begins with starting with only capital letters, because with capital letters, all you need are vertical lines, horizontal lines, and then half circles. And those developmentally, I gotta find something. There is a preschool mama who's an occupational therapist who shared a document of developmentally appropriate drawing and writing. And that falls right up on why capital letters are often easier for children to write early on. So, having said that, by the time they get to kindergarten is when they're going to start being able to manipulate their muscle shape and be able to do some more size differentiation to be able to make those lowercase letters, which are often more difficult. I'm going to now flip back to that thing I said before about early childhood lasting birth to age 7. So it used to be that at age 7 is when these children were expected to write their name with the uppercase and then lowercase following. That has drastically changed, which is why we see a lot of stress for teachers and children often, because their bodies may just simply not be ready for it. And that's just the way it is. But if you have a young kindergartner who is struggling with some of those things, it is likely that that's developmental, which doesn't mean you can't send them to kindergarten. It means that they're going to work on that in kindergarten and it will eventually get there. Or if you have the option of waiting a year, that'll show up there, and they'll enter into kindergarten with those skills in place. Whew. Talking. So I'm crossing those off, and we're moving on to purple. The purple, kind of that part of us that, so it's not your gut instinct, but it's that intuition, that sense of the wondering that you're doing, and those things that can kind of get in the way of being able to trust your gut and have a clear sense of what you're doing. And I think there are two big things that are happening for a lot of families now. Even I've had families tell me, even though they are confident 100% they're sending their child to kindergarten, they have these concerns. So one of the things that I mentioned before that I will again is I have a document of accommodation and modifications. And it's the assumption that every child, I'm about to get on my feisty, that every child has a unique way of showing up in the world, and every child has some kind of accommodation or modification that we make for them just because they are a human. And so I'm able to fill this paper out for every single child. This is no longer reserved for special needs kids or kids who will eventually or are already on an IEP. This is what have we done in the classroom setting for this child to naturally show up successfully in the classroom setting at our preschool. So I'm not able to do that if I haven't been with your child, but I would be able to pass on to you that same information, because it's likely something you would know, or your teacher would know, your child's teacher would know, or daycare provider, childcare provider. So that's the first thing. If you're thinking, oh my gosh, I know my kid's going to go to school and I don't know how they're going to do this or that. Well, let me tell you how it happened there. I know preschool is not the same as kindergarten, and we did deal with it there. The other thing I can say is another big concern for families, and a curiosity at least for mine, with an element of concern, but not a fear-based concern, is what the kindergarten classrooms will look like in fall due to the pandemic. So I know I'm part of groups online that are sharing all the different possibilities, things that include staying in the classroom the whole time with maybe half the class. So it could be that your kiddos will have a smaller group of people they're with. It could be that lunch is only served, that all meals are served in the classroom. Could be that playgrounds are closed, that they'll be able to have outside time but not playing on the playgrounds. Could be that things that are typically larger group without social distancing in place, like PE, library time, though that seems like that could be socially distant. Oh, but maybe not with cleaning. See, oh, my heart for folks who are working to figure this out. That could change the way kindergarten looks, and it could make it a little more challenging for those kiddos who were on the fence of being ready, and who were the ones who were like, I just got to make it through this so I can go play on the playground, or at least I get to leave this room and go to the lunchroom pretty soon, or I get to go run around in PE. I believe wholeheartedly that school systems will do everything they can to meet the needs of these kids. That's not what I'm questioning. What I'm questioning, or what I'm inviting or echoing, are the concerns for kiddos who are not showing a sense of readiness otherwise, that may be enough as you get closer to wondering if it's worth waiting. I've got word from 3 kindergarten teachers that say, that agree with the sentiment, if you've got a young kindergartner, incoming kindergartner, to really consider that. So that's going to move into the last few things that I have here, including some advice from parents who've been through this before, and questions from parents who have been through this before. But I think sometimes sharing our questions and our concerns is also a form of encouragement. So this is from one family who's done both. So, and all of these folks have said I can share this, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. While we do plan to send John, who had a birthday in January, to kindergarten next year, we chose to allow Finn, an older brother, an extra year of being little. He has a July 28th birthday. It was the best decision we could have ever made for him. It allowed him an extra year at home to grow and learn through play, the age-appropriate approach. The sitting expectations of kindergarten are hard for boys, and being a fresh 5-year-old means the attention span is just not where it is for other children who may be turning 6 within the first few months of school. The most common thing I hear people say all the time is that their child is academically ready, so they're going to send them. As both a mother and former teacher, I would say this is never a good reason. Much of school in the younger years is not about academics, but the social things. Another big factor to consider is that if you send your fresh 5-year-old, they could possibly be moving out and leaving for college at the age of 17. Another family wrote in, and it gives me chills because it gives me chills to read when parents know their children so well and are doing the hard work on their behalf of figuring out what to do next. So I'll read this, one more thing, and then see if there's anything else, and then we're done. About a little friend named Hudson. Regarding kindergarten, I feel that he needs to be busy and challenged. From what I remember, I think Hudson could probably keep up with first grade work. I think so. But I'm very concerned about his impulsivity and oppositionality at times. It takes a special technique to convince Hudson to get on board, and I don't feel schools may be set up to accommodate this. I gotcha. I got plans. We chose to send him because I don't feel that keeping him home would provide him the challenge and structure he needs. I agree. If there was such a thing as full-time preschool, I would probably keep him back a year. California has a publicly funded transitional kindergarten, which is essentially full-time preschool, and I think this would be ideal. I'm praying his teacher is able to see his big heart under the tough skin. See, that makes me cry, because that is my hope for all of your kids. That's it. And so our school district has a 5-day-a-week preschool program that I wish was open for 5-year-olds. And as far as I understand, it still is, once you reach the age of kindergarten eligibility by state standards, you've got to move on to kindergarten. But I agree. I often wish that there was a way for our kiddos who are done with such a play-based experimental learning and who would benefit from some of the more traditional classroom structure to be able to get that 5 days a week. All right. We've got another little friend who is going to kindergarten for the following reasons. He's attended preschool for over 2 years and can walk into class confidently without fear of learning something new. I love that. That goes back to that idea of how do they feel good about themselves, what's their self-perception. So if your child is walking in by themselves, looking around like, bring it on, that is just beautiful. That's a beautiful thing. I don't know that my kids ever had it, which could be me. And I say that genuinely, that I wish I would have. That's another time. I could do that some other time. I'll keep going. He's been showing signs of leadership in class, helping other kids learn how things work and what to do. Yes. His attention span has improved to be able to sit down, listen, and carry out instruction. He's proud of his work, wanting to show off things he's created. He is finally interested in the academic elements of school, not just the play. He asks his older brother questions about his school, curious about what he does there. He's bored with preschool videos and wants hands-on interactive learning. I love it. I get it. That is a huge sign. And his little sister still loves watching. So that's something too. So, dear families, thank you for being here with me in this. If you are a family that is at New Creation Preschool, you'll hear from me. I'm happy to answer specific questions about your child. If I don't know you in real time, I'm happy to answer specific questions about things that you have to ask me about your child. This is a big deal, a big transition, and I think it's made a little bit, it has become a little bit more bigger or heart-wrenching because of this state of pandemic, and that makes sense to me. So, thanks for being here. I wish you could enjoy those peanut M&Ms, and I wish you could smell that candle, and I wish you could have had some coffee, and I wish you could have held your little person here. And they will get these. I'll be sending these to them. And I hope we get to have live graduation for families who are graduating. That's the other thing. If your child is age eligible for kindergarten and isn't going to kindergarten, then they wouldn't be part of that graduating. And we don't use that. We don't use the language of, well, when you're 5, you go to kindergarten. That is not true. We've had so many kids. We've had kids at preschool until they turn to 7. So age isn't a thing. All right. Thanks, everybody. I will read messages, read comments, and I'll get back to you all. Thank you for taking time for this. Okay. I guess bye. Thanks again.